Thank you very much. I want to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to speak here on behalf of some pretty amazing people, the educational staff of Bedford County. Really want to emphasize that as I kind of go through this presentation, that the educational staff is not just the teachers, it's the people that work in the office, it's our custodians, our school nurses, our teacher aides. All of us are kind of linked together by a pay scale established by the county, and all of us have a high level of commitment to the children that we serve of this county. Just by way of introduction, my name is Chad Honeycutt. A series of misadventures has led me before you tonight, and I won't go into that, but education is a second career for me. I was a fire protection engineer for a long time. I've done work all over the world in fire protection. I always wanted to do education, so my wife generously allowed me to go back to school. So for the past 4 years, while preparing for that, I've been working as a special education aide at Thomas Jefferson Elementary. So recently I've joined the BCA and kind of had the privilege to become a spokesperson for them. So in putting this presentation together, I really wanted to emphasize that we just wanted to kind of communicate a partnership moving forward with education in Bedford County. So partnership for success, Bedford County Schools and the BCA working together for excellence in education. Why education? It's a question that probably shouldn't need to be asked, but I think sometimes we need to step back away from things and look at why it is such an important part of a community. Education gives people critical skills and tools to help them better provide for themselves and their children. It helps people work better and create opportunities and make them more sustainable as they move forward in the workforce. And education encourages transparency, good governance, and stability and secure futures. Education needs to be a priority. Education in Bedford County needs to be funded at the level prescribed by the school board. The school board sits there to kind of decide what they need to properly educate the children of the county. Our school system is drastically underfunded. Improvements are needed in technology, facilities, compensation for our educational staff.
Madam Chairman.
Sir.
May I ask a question? I don't want
to... No, absolutely. Feel free at any time.
Could you go back to
the
previous slide? Your first bullet point there implies that then the school, are you saying with your first bullet point that the school board is always making the right choices with the monies that they have? Because that would be the case if because your first bullet says
absolutely
whatever they ask for, give it to them. So are you saying that they are always correct in the way they spend money?
I'm saying that as you are, the school board is elected officials to serve a specific purpose. And that purpose is to decide at the recommendation of the staff that surrounds it what is needed for education in the county. They present a budget to you based on that, and then the Board of Supervisors chooses to either fund that budget or not fund that budget and say cuts are needed at this level or at this level, and then they have to go back and work with what they were presented with. So
right, but there was an efficiency study that came out not too long ago. I think you probably
I'm aware of it. Yeah.
That indicates that clearly there's some inefficiencies and monies can be saved in the system.
It's not my purpose here to attack either the Board of Supervisors or the school board. I think that if you look at any organization, improvements can always be made. I know as teachers and as educators, we're constantly looking at better ways to do things. So certainly an efficiency study would point out areas that need to be improved, and hopefully we learn from those areas that need to be improved and act upon them. If that answers some of your question?
Yes, it just, your first bullet implies that the school board always knows best, and I can't accept that presupposition.
As an educator, I work underneath the school board.
I understand.
And as a citizen, I trust that, we trust that our elected officials are working in the best interests to the task that they've been assigned to work.
But
so there is a level of assumption on my part, as a citizen, as an employee by Bedford County Schools, that the school board is making the decisions they need to make that are in the best interest of the children of this county.
And I believe that that's what they believe. I agree.
Okay.
However, there's always room for disagreement. And
Absolutely.
And that's the point that I'm making.
And I think this is a, very representative of my purpose here tonight, is kind of open up a level of communication to kind of see where we can all improve and find what is necessary for this county.
And I agree.
Is that?
Yes.
And feel free, I'm used to working in schools, so I'm used to interruptions.
And I apologize.
Oh, no, it's fine. I appreciate.
But I
I
assumed that you would prefer this one.
Absolutely, absolutely. Our school system, just kind of reiterate this, we see it as drastically underfunded in improvements, technology, facilities, compensation for educational staff. Among the many results of underfunding, Bedford County has left its educational staff underpaid. Education has changed. It's a very dynamic and fluid thing. Recent changes to education, especially in Bedford County, have been personalized education, a strong focus on that, response to intervention in special education, state AYP review, and compliance. All of these have represented a significant impact to the day-to-day operations of the school and to the educators that work inside of it. Personalized education, and I'm happy to, this is the Board of Supervisors, not the school board, so any questions that arise, please feel free to ask. It benefits the students. The modern system of education is to teach to every student and not just the class. It has its benefits. But it also has its consequences, and the consequences are felt by the teachers and the educational staff. It's increased planning time for tiered lesson plans, teaching material in different ways and at different paces, and increased in-class modifications and accommodations for students. And I want to be clear that this is not special education. This isn't IDEA or No Child Left Behind. This is the model of education that we have now. We teach every student, and it's a good model, and it's the way for students to be successful. Bedford County teachers and staff are professional and up to the challenge, but at times it feels like we're being asked to provide more for less. Response to intervention in special education. I know for us, things like IDEA and No Child are commonplace in our daily conversations, but special education and RTI have really impacted teachers. Teachers are constantly being pulled out of the classroom to sit in IEP meetings that are required by law. Teachers are having to stay after school for extended period of times for IEP meetings, RTI meetings, and teachers are also having to find ways to implement these goals and modifications into their classrooms. And these are things that are required for the teachers to do. State review and oversight. As we continue to strive for improved SOL scores, we face the reality of increased demands on teachers for compliant lesson plans as the state reviews them, increased time spent in meetings, and low staff morale. The reality is, throughout the county, we have several schools that are under review and that they're not meeting the SOL scores they need to achieve. These are not buildings that all of a sudden all the teachers became bad at. It's just a reality of the SOLs and the way the state's going to enforce their interpretation of AYP. So as we move forward with that, we need to remember that it does impact the lives of the people working in those schools. And you have some schools where teachers are having to stay 2-3 hours after school for meetings to comply with this. Professionalism, dedication, and commitment to excellence should not be taken advantage of. The reality of teaching is it's kind of a calling. We're going to teach as long as we have students to teach, but it's no reason to ignore the fact that our school staff are underpaid for the service that they provide. So what we did was we took a kind of a salary scale comparison of local municipalities that a teacher in Bedford County could realistically commute to if they lived in this area, and looked at where our salaries fell in the pay scales with those counties. As you can see, they're listed there. Again, this just kind of reflects the reason why we chose these particular counties. This is not comparing LCIs. This is only comparing a competitive market for teachers. So this is how we fall out for a starting teacher coming out of college. This is where they would fall on the scale. So we're the bottom 4 out of these 11 municipalities and counties. And something to kind of also be pointed out here is a teacher that was hired 7 years ago out of college would still be on that pay scale, that starting pay scale. So a teacher hired right out of college today at a Bedford County school would be paid the same amount as a teacher hired 7 years ago and who had given 7 years of service to this county and the students of it. And this to me is probably one of the most significant things. This is a salary comparison summary. And as you know, our salary scales are based on years of service, and that's how they determine where you fall out in pay. And to me, the most tragic one is that 30 years. The teachers that have been with the county the longest, the one that have been the most committed, we fall in the bottom 3 of those local counties and municipalities. And here's where we fall in the average teacher salary comparison. So if we kind of blend everybody's salaries together and we take an average, we fall dead last to those local communities.
Chad,
Yes.
can you go back to the
Yeah.
previous one? I'm not implying that the teachers are underpaid, because I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
Please don't misunderstand. But I'm a math guy.
Yeah.
And in none of those categories is Bedford County last, right?
Well,
Yet on your next slide, Bedford County's last. So if you'll go to your next slide, Bedford County's last. However, that average is just that. I mean, if you have more newer teachers than a locality that might have 30-year teachers, then that's going to obviously affect the average. Is that correct?
it does, but what also skews that average is what I just mentioned, that you have teachers that have been teaching in that 5 plus range, approaching that 10-year plus range, that are still on the first year salary scale.
But it says there.
Because our salaries have been locked. These salary comparisons are not taking, they're taking the total average of the, so these represent the pay scales as they stand. Okay. This is a representation of all the teachers' pay combined in those various communities. So, yeah. So, I mean, you can infer several things from this. One, you can infer that we're losing teachers that have been teaching for a long time. Another thing that you can infer is that we had a hiring boom about 5, 6, 7 years ago with teachers that got locked into that salary scale. Because if you're in that first year, if you were hired as a new teacher in that range of 7 years, you're still making less than $40,000 a year. I believe the starting pay was 37. So it does average out. You're happy. I've got the source reference for for any follow-up. I'm happy to email it to you and communicate where I'm getting the information.
The only point I'm making is in none of those categories was Bedford County last, and yet in average we are. However, there's a whole lot of things. I mean, if I had 100% all-in teachers, I'm clearly going to be last in average. And so there's a whole lot of factors.
No, I understand, but I think if you were to, it's not comparing apples to apples, because if you were to look at,
I agree. That's exactly
Yeah.
why that. I completely agree. It's not comparing apples to apples, and that is why that's somewhat of a misleading slide.
I don't think it's misleading, because this is the reality of where we're at. The average teacher salary in Bedford County right now sits at $41,000, just over $41,000.
But there's a lot of factors.
There's a lot of factors that go into that. I understand that, and I was a businessman. I understand that it may cost Roanoke City a lot less in overhead to employ a teacher than what it does Bedford County. I'm aware of that fact, but these are the numbers as they stand, and these are the numbers that affect the people that go home and need to pay the bills. And again, I'm happy to communicate the sources to you to verify, but it is very misleading, and it's misleading to the teachers, and it's misleading to new hires too, because you come in and there's a year-to-year salary scale. So next year I should expect a bump of X amount, but that hasn't been in place for almost 7, going on 8 years now.